From the world's most respected MMO news site, Massively Overpowered, comes a program that pits one MMO against another in a battle of wits. To the death. Welcome to Massively Opinionated. Media personalities from all over the internet come to this forum to face off in the ultimate debate. Everyone is entitled to their wrong opinion, but ours is the only one that matters. Having heard that someone was wrong on the internet, it's your host, Larry Everett!
Hey everybody, this is Larry Everett with Massively OP, and you're watching another episode of Massively Opinionated. And on this show, we take the MMO tropes that you argue about in your guild chat and like everywhere else on the internet, especially on Twitter. I see it all the time. And we take those arguments and bring them into one show and figure out whose argument is the best. And this week, we're talking about different systems within an MMO and which ones work best, which ones should be eliminated, which ones should just take over the whole MMO as a genre. And I brought with me some of my friends from Play to Win TV, and we're going to talk about these things. And so let me get right to introducing the panelists here today. First off, we have Andrew Desmond. How's it going, sir?
I'm good. I'm glad to be back. Second time on the show. Troy, I am coming for you. I was robbed last time, and you know it. So it's gonna be fun.
And you have Taylor Swift over your shoulders, so you know you're ready to go.
You know,
she's even pointing at you.
I know.
You need
right.
that moral support, my friend.
I got.
Don't let her down, Andrew. Don't let her down.
All right, and you heard him already. This is Troy Blackburn. How's it going, sir?
I don't think a near shutout is being robbed. I believe it was 3-1. I don't believe that's classified as being robbed.
I won two of those three
victory.
questions you won, and you know it.
All right, and also from Play to Win TV, Chuck Dunmire. That's how you say last name, right?
Yeah,
Chuck Dunmire.
right.
How's it going?
Chuck D. Good,
Chuck D.
good. I'm ready to smash these two guys, man. They're going down.
All right, yeah.
Yeah.
Chuck has told me before the show that he is definitely a good debater, and he's going to take both of these guys down. It could happen. It can happen. We know it can.
Andrew, man. Taylor Swift's looking over your shoulder. She's riding on you.
She's pointing.
Judging you. She's
You
judging.
can't. You can't beat this pair. This is the couple right now. So watch it.
All right, so let me go before we get into the debate itself. Let me go over the rules really quickly. What I do is I've given these guys 4 questions before the show started, and they are going to give their answers to that and then also prove why their answer is the best answer to it. And I will award a point to whichever one has the best argument. I am basing it on the argument itself, not necessarily my personal opinion. And at the end of the show, we'll tally up the points, and whoever has the most points wins the internet. And we do have a bonus question if for some reason there happens to be a tie. So without further ado, let's get into what I'm talking about here. We are talking about systems this time. So this could be anything from raids to like battlegrounds, any kind of PvP systems like that, world versus world, those kinds of things. PvE, like just solo PvE, to dungeons, to housing, to crafting, to even auction house and bazaar and those kinds of things. So the first question is, if all MMOs were to focus only on one of these types of gameplay, so one of these systems, at the cost of the others getting less updated, which would be the most beneficial and why? And I'm going to throw it to Andrew first. What is your answer? Which one is it?
All right, so I might surprise you guys a little bit with this answer because I don't know. I usually don't scream about this, but for me, especially coming from like the upfront development of a game, like I'm assuming we're just launching a new game right now.
Yeah.
Like if we're gonna launch a new game, what is the absolute most important thing that the developing team needs to focus on? That's casual PvE content, period, specifically the story. And story is king, period. That's it. Your game, the reason for that is the game can have objectively the best raids on the market. You can have the coolest PvP or battlegrounds. I don't care. Housing system, dungeon mechanics, crafting, a good economy, all of that stuff. If you don't have a great story that gets me first initially hooked in the first hour to 3 hours of gameplay, and then beyond that, up through whatever leveling process there is in the game, I will objectively not play your game. You can't keep me hooked on a game that I'm not playing. So that's the number one thing that you need to absolutely focus on. I'm not going to waste my time on something that, even if you have, like, there's this promise after 300 hours of leveling that I'm eventually going to get the good stuff. That's a waste of my time to spend all that time waiting for something that I'm not enjoying the journey to. To me, an MMO is all about the process of bettering your character and getting through that system and enjoying all of the storyline along the way and making that experience enjoyable. So that's my answer right there.
Okay, so Troy, why is he wrong? And what's your answer?
I actually had two potential answers ready to go, just in case somebody wanted to make one of my arguments. So I'm going to go with one of my alternative answers and offer a few counterpoints here. I'm going to say in-game rating, dungeons, in-game content is going to be what needs to be focused on the most. The reasoning behind that being every MMO on the market today, every expansion that comes out, no matter how good it is, ends up being judged on the raid in-game content. Specific example, Warlords of Draenor for World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
That expansion dropped. It brought back tons of people. I came back to the game for the first time since the launch of Cataclysm. Absolutely loved the leveling, the questing, the PvE. I called it one of the best expansions or probably the best expansion that they had since Wrath of the Lich King. But if you look now, people have nothing but negative things to say about Warlords of Draenor. It was such a positive initial experience, but now the entire expansion is being judged on what happened to the end game. The sheer lack of it, the amount of, or the complete lack of fun that folks are having in it, the sheer lack of content. I mean, there's been just 2 or 3 actual raids introduced to the end. The entire game, the entire expansion, the subscriber numbers have dropped. Oh my God, how low compared to what they've been for the past, 8 years. The raid content is what the entire game is judged on. Whether we like it or not, that's the reality of the world we live in MMOs. You look at a game like Guild Wars 2, people get to level cap and then they're confused. Well, I don't even know what to do now. Why would I keep playing? There's no raids to go do. There's no dungeons to go do. There is content in Guild Wars 2. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's not, but it's not the typical type of content you're used to at the end of an MMO. So people are confused about what to do. And at the end of the day, you can have all the great, super awesome PvE storytelling content you want. People are going to blow through it in 3 days and say, where's the raid?
All right. So Chuck, clearly both of these guys are wrong. Why are they both wrong? And what is your answer?
Yeah, they're not wrong. Unfortunately, I have to agree with both of them. And as a hardcore PvPer who has played 33, 34, like I was saying pre-show, I actually agree. Every single game you play is PvE, and every single game you're pushing is PvE. I'm sorry, but PvP, I hate to say it, is the stepchild, that redhead. I mean, in PvP, you're playing against NPCs and monsters. You're making a love child with the PvE RPG system. These fights are developed, with a fixed pattern of artificial intelligence that you're supposed to learn and grow and build on. As a player develops their strategy and the cognitive process, the fights become easier and easier. That's with the raid thing, like you were saying, Troy. I absolutely agree with that. Every game focuses primarily on PvE due to the nature of gaming. Every single game we have been grown, born, and raised with from when we were little kids up to now, if you're 30 or before or 30 or younger, it's all been RPGs, text-based RPGs, and growing up with a storyline that's beautiful, that hooks you. It's like reading a book or watching a movie and captivating individuals. I mean, that's what it's all about. That's why I have to agree with these guys. I mean, cognitive process and cognitive thinking drives human interest.
So what would be the most beneficial then? Would you say in possible contrast to what they're saying? That
the story, I can't really say the contrast, but it's got to be the storyline. It's got to be the way a storyline plays with players' emotions and drives you to make different decisions. I think nowadays that the crucial part of MMOs is the fact that you have an ability to make choices, to drive your emotions, to make a decision in the outcome of the game. Like SWTOR, you can make decisions and you can just slay the crap out of a Jedi, or you can slay the crap out of a Sith, but yet you can go and move on with the progress and get darker or uglier. And the same thing goes with like Fable and all these other games that have built the process generated like content where you get to decide. You know, it's like reading that book back in the day when you were like a kindergartner and there was like the choices you could make in the book, and you'd flip over to like page 73 and read that part of the story, and then you flip back to page 13 and keep going. That's what's amazing about storylines today in MMOs, is because they are pushing that kind of content out to the players.
So I guess I would say, as far as the differentiation is concerned here, then that Chuck, what you're focusing on is that almost like the epic story,
Absolutely,
the side of it where the player makes the decisions and that kind of thing. The way that I see Andrew's argument, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, but is just the more casual content in general, not necessarily the storyline pushing. Although storyline, you said, was important because it drives the player forward. But
I think I'm pushing more of the storyline that's like a treadmill theme park kind of thing, whereas Chuck's talking a little bit more about user-generated content.
Yeah,
to some degree, like how
you
make actual dynamic decisions about what your character is going to be as it moves along. Right? I think that's about right.
Right. But gamers are problem solvers. Like each RPG and storyline that we push is based to drive stories problems. We are trying to solve problems, like whether it's a king oppressing the freaking people, or it's some demonic dude that's coming down with rains of fire and portals are opening up and eating people's souls. You got to stop that as a player. And that's how you're going to smash people down. And you, as like the shining knight or the evil badass, excuse my language, you're the one who's supposed to push that stuff. And that's why games are so important with MMOs, and storylines are pushing that kind of content, because that's where your heart is. 75% of gamers that play MMOs are all storyline driven players. They love PvE. I'm sorry.
Well, I got to look up that statistic.
I'm just saying, like, if I would guess, it'd be like 75% of the gamers, because if you look at statistics for PvP players and PvE players, I'm going to guess 3/4 of players are PvE players. You know what I mean?
I'm going to guess that actually your 75% number is a little low.
It might be. I mean, I absolutely agree.
You hear like people come out and say, how come you didn't introduce
this
new piece of content for PvP?
Yeah.
How come you didn't introduce new? And usually you'll hear the developer say, well, you're 2% of the player base. You know,
right? Yeah,
sorry, but the fact is, you know, you're nothing.
Yeah, I wanted to go low because I wanted to give my boys, the PvPers, a little chance. But the idea that your character progresses through a storyline, and tomorrow and the next day and the next day, your character keeps pushing the PvE progress until you hit in game. That's what hooks you. That's what drives you. You get to make your choices and build your character the way you want to in MMOs. And that's what's making this game and taking your hobby and building your soul and your heart into your character. And that's why I think storyline and player-driven PvE content is why it's so important.
Okay,
absolutely.
So Troy, I'm gonna throw it to you, because you probably have the most contrasting answer here. Why is the end game the most important? Why is it more important than the story being told or the casual PvE content?
Because at the end of the day, the crux of this argument is it's not about what we want it to be about. It's what reality shows it's about. And in the MMO world, the reality is it's all about the end game. Your game is judged entirely upon the end game. Your expansions are judged entirely upon the end game. Once players are through all that PvE content, everybody's at the end game. That's the stuff that can, like I said, we've watched it with Warlords of Draenor, completely changed the perception of that entire expansion once we got into the in-game rotation. Your entire game's future depends on what folks think when they've blown through all the PvE content.
You know, to me, Troy, you've made all of my arguments for me right now, and I'm going to go through one by one. So the reason why raids are not like the number one thing is if you look at that as the number one thing that you need a game to develop especially just starting off. WildStar. Need I say anything?
Oh, I was gonna say that.
Seriously.
Oh man.
They neglected a number of things, but the number one thing that they neglected with WildStar was the storytelling.
Yep.
They did not tell a good story there. They didn't get people hooked. I tried to play it on more than one occasion, and I got stuck after like an hour. I was like, this is I feel no reason to be even playing this game.
I quit after 3 days.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it. And you can't keep me hooked on a game that I'm just not playing because you didn't get me interested right off the bat. The other thing with Warlords, first off, why did Warlords add 3 million new subscribers? It's because we went back to Draenor, and because of the storyline and the, following the orcs and everything. That was why people went back. It was mostly because of story, not because of the content. World of Warcraft hasn't been pushing the boundaries when it comes to anything ever. So like that's not what it is. And then you see, I'm not denying that raids are important. You can't deny that having that hardcore endgame stuff isn't important, or you can't deny that it is important. Like, the thing is, after that story high came on, the reason why they lost 5 million subscribers in 6 months was because there wasn't enough casual soloable PvE content or things that you could do in small groups that would keep you enjoying the game and playing it over time. Not everybody's pushing that hardcore endgame raiding content. The number one thing that you're playing for is, like, I don't log in every day to push a raid. I don't. I log in every day to go and play and do my quests or run a small 4-man dungeon or something like that, or 5-man dungeon in WoW. That's why you would jump in. All of those other and continue playing all these other things, the rating, and then you talk about PvP and the economy, all that stuff. Those are great marketing tools to get those hardcore people in, and those people that think that they want to be that hardcore player, to get them to buy the game maybe, or to come back when you have something cool. But once you beat it, or if you can't beat it, or you might not just be able to get a full group together because you need 9 other people to show up and help you out with it, it's not going to keep you in. The thing that keeps you hooked on, not just, I look at why WildStar has been struggling, whereas after a rocky launch, ESO was able to take off. And, the same thing with Star Wars The Old Republic, and the reason why World of Warcraft has done really well. Unlike games like WildStar, they had an established IP with a large amount of lore background and great story content that was sitting there that people would get immersed in and fall in love with and want to play out enough so that they could get themselves into the game before all of those other things can get you hooked. If you don't have those other things, you're going to struggle, or at least some of those other things. But if you don't have the casual PvE and the storyline, nobody's going to play your game.
Andrew, that's where I have to disagree with you. World of Warcraft, I bought it, played vanilla WoW. Really didn't feel the storyline. Really didn't feel the lore. I played Warcraft 1, 2, the expansions. I played all of those strategy RTS games. But when I started playing World of Warcraft, it just seemed like a grind fest. It almost seemed like a Korean thing. Go kill 5 pigs, go kill 10 pigs, go kill 15 and gather this and gather that. Run over here, do this, run over here and do this. 15 quests that same the same thing. Grind all the way up. There really wasn't a storyline for me, and that's why I wasn't really hooked on World of Warcraft. The only reason I played World of Warcraft was because my buddies played World of Warcraft. I don't think the storyline was that hooking to me. I really don't. And Troy, I got you back, man, because I know for a fact you were talking about PvE, and I know your number one choice was PvE. It was not in-game rating. I know your first choice was PvE, but we all three agreed on it because what makes the most money? PvE. What makes the most players play the game?
Not even. Thanks for making that argument for me.
I know.
95% of the players that are playing PvE are
Don't
not playing raiding.
don't confuse the point that we're debating, though. We're not debating who plays the most. We're debating if a company had to choose one aspect
Yeah,
focus
yeah,
on
to
more
focus on.
at the sacrifice of some others. And
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay. Let's be honest. Wildstar made a lot of mistakes in a lot.
Oh yeah, that was my number one game in my
But
head.
you know, we can all say, you know, we played through the PvE, we wasn't that interested in it, we all walked away. But at the end of the day, when you go and look up Wildstar reviews and why the most vocal people left and what's out there in the community is the in-game, the rating was screwed up. It was too hardcore. There was too much attunement. You look at World of Warcraft, Warlords of Draenor. They got to the end game, they all disappeared. You can say it was because you know, they didn't have enough PvE content, you know, go out questing and stuff like that. Everybody was max level. Everybody was looking for more. You go out and look at why the perception of World of Warcraft, why Warlords of Draenor specifically has changed. It's because of the rating tiers, very specifically. Like I said, by far, we all know it's you know, public knowledge that the larger portion of the player base plays just the PvE, but the public perception of your game let me
ask you this. All right, and this will probably close everything out here and round everything off. What is the most benefit? How would you define the benefit of a game? I mean, is it number of players? Is it a large number of players logging in all the time? I mean, what do you consider to be the biggest benefit to the game? And then that, I mean, because that ties into why you choose, you know, why do you choose end game rating as the reason, or why do you choose storyline as the reason, or why do you choose, you know, casual PvE? So Troy, go ahead. I mean, what is the benefit to, what is
the benefit of the end game rating is there's more positivity out there for the game overall. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what everybody judges the game on. Once you know the few months have gone by, they're like, the end game was really bad, the rating was really bad, or was really good. The positive opinion out there, you don't get all the. I mean, look, how many times have you posted about an MMO, Larry, and the comment section is full of, well, that game's dead. Do people even still play this game anymore? And that comes from folks who don't even play the game, just based on the public opinion out there of what they've seen and read and heard from others about the game. And I would argue that most of the time, the perception that they've heard, seen, and read comes from what people thought of the in-game content.
Okay.
I can't disagree with you more on that. I mean, how many times have people said WoW is dead? WoW's not dead. I mean, it's dying. I mean, it's an 11-year-old game. I mean, it's going to die eventually. But like, think about success in the fact that you can lose 5 million subscribers in 6 months and still be the largest MMO on the market. Like, that's mind-blowing. Like, the reason why what makes a game successful is, to me, the longevity of a game and having it be able to last throughout time. And the reason why certain games and IPs and series are able to last is not because, like, you don't watch a Star Wars movie and are mind blown by, you know, the cinematics and fall in love with it and just never, you know, that's why you're a fan of it. You're a fan of it because of the story. I mean, yeah, they're pushing the boundaries in some ways, but that's not the thing that makes you fall in love with it. The thing that makes you fall in love with it is the story. That's what gets you hooked, and that's what keeps you playing the game over time. So for me, success is longevity, and in order to be able to get a game to be lasting a long time, you need a strong, good core player base that's going to stick with it and grow. And appealing to the largest, widest audience is the way to go, and that's where the
all right, Chuck,
PvE and all that stuff comes from.
Hey, man.
What final thoughts?
All right, my final thoughts. What makes a game's longevity? Social aspects of a game. When you play a storyline and you love that freaking storyline, right? It's like an RPG. You go and play Fable. We're not talking about MMOs right now. We're playing RPGs, right? We go play Fable. We go play Star Wars. the Knights of the Old Republic. You go play those games, and that storyline drives you and drives you and drives you, and you play it. Once you hit to the end, most people don't play that game again. But if you've got buddies and you've got people that love the same stuff you do, that social aspect of loving the storyline, falling in love with it, drives players to keep playing. And that's why these games are so successful, because you all are in love with the same storyline that I am. You all love reading books or whatever it is that makes you feel like, oh my God, man, I just fell away from the world and fell in love with this game. That's what drives it. It's the story. And it's the fact that you have other people that are in love with that stuff, and the social aspect of that game is what keeps you playing with other people in an MMO. An MMO is about a bunch of people playing the same game. If it wasn't an MMO, it'd be an RPG and you'd be playing single player, right? So that's why MMOs are so awesome, is because you all have the same commonality and you all love the same kind of stuff of that storyline, or else you guys would have quit early. And you guys are all pushing towards the end of the game. And then that's why we all want the new in-game content, is because we all want to push it together. And you build a kind of a camaraderie or brotherhood or sisterhood or whatever amongst each other, because you love the lore, you love the story, and you guys all feel for the game and have a connection to your character and stuff. That's why PvE is so important. That's why the storyline is so important. That's why decision-making in the game is so important. It's because all of you as a collective group of an MMO are pushing for that end game, and pushing for the end of the storyline to go to the next storyline, to go to the next storyline, and keep working together as a team, as a group, because humans love playing with other humans and solving problems that are presented to you as a group.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna make a call on this one, and there's a tiny bit of cleanup as far as the statistics were concerned, just so everybody is aware of this. Now, we don't have any modern statistics on it. Most of the statistics are about 5 or 6 years old. So
yeah, it takes a while to get those.
So just so you're aware. And statistically, ages 23 to 28.
Andrew, you're out.
Which is about, that falls right about in the middle as far as age groups or for MMOs are concerned, somewhere in there. 67% of players EVE.
Dude, I was so close. Actually,
it was really close. Close.
I just threw that ballpark like 3/4 of the players. That's pretty cool.
That's from, and so people are if people are wanting to look this up themselves, this is off the Daedalus project, which was done in 2009.
Yeah, I've never even heard of it.
It was Nick Yee actually did it, and it's really cool. You should look it up sometime. As far as statistics and stuff like that are concerned. Anyway, but that being said, I think that what's really funny, Chuck, is that you made a lot of arguments for Andrew. Whenever you were presenting stuff.
Of course I did. I mean, what do you expect when he starts? When I started, it would have been him making arguments for me.
but I don't think, because the strong point of the storyline, I don't think is as strong as I think we've seen it with the success of WoW, that the storyline, although isn't necessarily as important as the camaraderie that happens and that happens in the casual PvE area. And so this time, although gosh, I know what Troy's saying and I absolutely personally agree with it, I have to give the point to Andrew because
it's because he's cute and young. Just saying. He's cute and young, man.
Taylor's got my back, guys.
Taylor's got your back. She's pointing at you. You're a cute and young guy with that badass goatee. Cheers, my brother. There's a point to you.
All right. So the next question I asked, and the next two questions actually are kind of paired off of each other, but we'll go with the next one is which individual system is most. Sorry, let me start over. Which is the most impactful system that MMO developers do not spend enough time on? Now we know that they spend a lot of time on like PvE. So that's out. That's like off the table, if you will. So we can't say PVE. And generally speaking, and it depends on. I haven't heard these answers yet. So generally speaking, we can't say PvP as a whole because we do know they spend quite a bit of time on that. However, there might be individual aspects of that we can pull in there. And just
Square Enix and Final Fantasy would argue with you.
That's true. That's very true. But all right, so I'm gonna throw this one to Troy first. What is your answer here, sir?
For me, that's definitely crafting. That's the one thing when an MMO does it well, I absolutely love. And unfortunately, most MMOs don't do it well. It's just another thing to level in most MMOs. And when you get to end game, yeah, you can probably craft a thing or two to get you started, but then you just move on from that. And you most times you move on to whatever drops from the bosses in the end game. And it's just crafting in most games is entirely lackluster. And if you look back and you're going to laugh at first when I say this example because of the way it is now, but at first, early on in Firefall's beta development, their crafting was spectacular.
That's a game I haven't heard for a while.
Yeah, really. But that's one of the main things I loved about Firefall was 50% of the game was you were out, doing all your sandbox activities, doing the little dynamic events that spawn, but you were gathering resources along the way. You were going and doing specific things to gather resources and gathering them as you do other things. But then you would come back and you could literally craft everything you needed. And it was like the best of the best. And there may have been drops out there that were better, but there was absolutely no shame in wearing crafted gear. And in most MMOs, now obviously not all, because we all play, obviously we do the Tesla Nation podcast, we're all ESO players. That crafting system is really good too. I enjoy it. Unfortunately, when you get to the end game, it kind of does the same fall off where the drops become more important than the crafting. But for me, I wish more MMOs would spend more effort on crafting. You could use it to boost your economy, get that trade out there, light up your auction house with useful things that people are creating. Give them the ability to change, to control the looks of it, the way it looks, give them that customization option through the crafting system. And also get people out in the world, spread your whatever resources you need to gather to craft, spread those out throughout the world. Don't make them this level has to go to this zone and this level has to go to this zone. Get your players back in the older zones, in the older areas that seem barren to everybody else, gathering the resources to do the crafting. I think it would benefit most MMOs tremendously if there was more effort put into the crafting.
All right. Excellent answer. Chuck, why is he wrong and what's your answer?
Well, first off, if you were talking about 1999 to 2007-8, you would be right. But unfortunately, nowadays, sandboxy games have conquered crafting because of Minecraft, because of 7 Days to Die, and now MMOs are starting to take those concepts and building on it. I have some examples. Darkfall 1 and 2.
Wait, what was it? Darkfall. Okay.
All crafting-based games. You have to go and mine. It's full loot, and most games are now sucking up the sandboxy type of game and developing an all crafting system based on an MMO. If we were talking about years ago, I get it, man. But right now, games are starting to develop towards that. So we are seeing the change now where people are crafting more and more of all the game stuff.
Okay.
So my personal feeling about what is the most underestimated part of the gaming for MMOs is guild building, social guild building. The reason why is, and I'm going to read it to you what I typed. I think guilds are the most underestimated product of MMOs. There are still very few games that have developed a good guild-based system, but most of those games lack that system. If you instill progressive guild mechanics, you will see more groups, more cohesion, and a well-oiled machine-chewing end-game content guild. What do you see right now? 90%, I'm going to guess, of the time during the launch of a game, players are starving for a guild. They're asking, looking for group, help me. Hey, do you have a guild? We still see it in Elder Scrolls Online, and they are wanting to push those in-game content. They want to make friends because humans are what? Pack animals. Humans are pack animals. We rely on each other to get through life. You have to have people making all sorts of crap to get through life, right? I mean, I'm right.
Yep.
All right. So life is an MMO. It isn't very different from the MMO is not very different from real life when it comes to the social aspects of life. It's all based off of reality and what people are watching and enjoying. Reality TV is huge right now, and socially driven stuff is huge right now. You watch all this stuff of people being socially interactive and people love it. They're digging it. They're eating it, right? Look at society. It's all based off of reality. All right. An MMO is the best people watching device available. It is. People do crazy stuff because when they're behind the curtains, like the Power of Oz, they come out and they do crazy stuff in MMO. So that is my take on what is the most impactful system and why we don't spend enough
Guild
time
building.
in
Okay, I know that Andrew's thinking something similar, but go ahead, Andrew. What is?
You know, I was irritated at first because Chuck took my answer, and then towards the end there, I feel like he was starting to endorse like ERP or something. That was like,
all right. Oh, hey, do you not know I'm sponsored by them?
ERP.
All right. I agree with Chuck. I agree that social systems are the most impactful system that an MMO developer needs to spend more time on than they do. Elder Scrolls Online is an excellent example of a game that had a horrendous guild system to start off, especially in terms of guild administration. Now they've gone and fixed it and they've added more tools, but damn, was that a gutted system.
So would you say then would you say, because Chuck was focusing on the guild systems, would you say then that just social systems?
So I'm going to say social systems just in general. Guilds are a big part of that. I think, you know, last question we just established, like, to me, story is king. If story is king, then the community is God, right?
Absolutely.
Like you can have the best game on the planet. You can have every system impeccable from that first question we were just talking about, and then some. And even beyond the story getting you hooked, if you don't have friends to play with every day, if the developers don't make it easy for you to play with other players in a variety of different ways, you're not going to stick around. Nope. So, you know, to me, I guess the best example I can give of this is I played World of Warcraft. It was my first big MMO. I know I'm young. They're going to make fun of me for it. It's fine.
He's so cute.
He's so cute. But I played it for like 5 or 6 years. And of that time, I think I actually brought this up the last time I was on this podcast back in June. I was only really enjoying the game and the content and stuff like that maybe 12 to 18 months out of all that time, but I kept my subscription up and I didn't really let it lapse because it was basically a glorified $15 a month chat channel and a place where I could interact with all of my friends and all my buddies. And even when, you know, all the content got stale and World of Warcraft goes 2 years without a patch, and, you know, you've done hunting down all the achievements you want, beaten all the raids, and you're running through that dungeon the 232nd time. When you're doing it with friends, it's still enjoyable. So to be able to have the guild tools, like the tool sets in place for guild administration, for being able to have, like, I don't know, it depends on your play style, but some kind of a functionable looking for group tool, ways that you can get into groups with other people, getting communication to be a good thing. I know there's a lot of people in Elder Scrolls Online's consoles right now that are flipping out over the fact that there's no text chat on the console version.
How could you live with listening to people talk constantly?
It's hard to form groups, and that's where that's a weakness of the console version. To me, like, World of Warcraft managed to siphon hundreds of dollars away from me because despite of having really a lack of good content that I was enjoying, and any other systems, like, they were in not the best state, but all of my friends were there. We had a great community. It was great at fostering the community, and not just in game, but having the developers even just interact with people in the community outside of it. You see, you know, when you go to different conventions and you can meet developers, if they do like live streams, like developers doing live streams. That's a huge deal for a lot of players. Those are sorts of things that can help kind of unite people, bring them in, and make them feel more comfortable with the game and make them want to stick around longer. So that would be my argument for why social systems in general.
Yeah, I'll get to the differentiation between. I think Andrew's hit some stuff on the head here as far as the differentiation between guild and social systems in general, and why one could outdo the other. But let me first throw it to Troy and ask. And I want to ask about because part of the question was developers not spending enough time on it, and I'd like to focus on that. Why do you think that why is it that developers haven't spent a lot of time on it, or where have you seen developers not spend enough time on it, and where have they spent time on the other things?
I think I sort of focused my answer sort of based on that portion of the question.
Yeah.
I think social systems are more a debate for what makes an MMO work. And I don't think there's any doubt that developers spend a ton of time on social systems and guilds. They don't always get them right. I mean, perfect example, ESO. That doesn't mean they didn't spend a ton of time on them.
They did not spend any time.
They didn't spend any time, man. They were like, drop the ball on that.
It was like,
so you've got one game that didn't spend any time on it. Every other game out there, the guilds are always a thing. There's always systems. There's guild leveling in a ton of MMOs. As a genre as a whole, it is not something that doesn't get any time. Developers spend a ton of time on guilds. Guild Wars 2 is coming out with a new expansion. Yeah, there's new zones and content and stuff, but the crux of everything that expansion is bringing is guild systems. They're spending a ton of time on guild systems, and most games come complete with guild systems, and they improvise on those and iterate on those as the years go by. Crafting just always seems to be, for me, there again, just going back to the way the question was worded, do not spend enough time on. It's just always crafting. And there's so many games where it's just sort of an afterthought. It's just like World of Warcraft, Rift. There's so many games where it's just thrown in just to have something else to level up. And then when you get to none of the stuff you level up, even if your current level of the crafting, is not even useful. It's nowhere near as good. You can go kill any random wolf out in the street and get something better. And then when you get to end game, it becomes almost useless, except for that one little window where you're just getting into raids and, let me craft myself some hit gear. And then all of a sudden it's not useful anymore. So just the crafting is just a system based on the question, what doesn't get enough? Crafting never gets enough love in most games.
So my interpretation of this question was not spending enough time. Sure. What they need to spend more time on is things that statistically are more impactful. How many people in an MMO actually enjoy crafting and go at it? Statistically, right now, I guarantee you it's less than 10%.
And you really think that those developers aren't spending time on that?
But Troy, you just said Guild Wars 2. Think of the name of the game you referenced. Guild Wars 2.
And they have spent a ton. They have
Anyway,
entire thing that they've done is
after
around
the launch.
guilds. That's the argument.
Crafting Wars 2. It's Guild Wars 2.
And Troy,
you're not making a good argument here.
No.
I'm not arguing.
I am.
Go ahead.
Chuck is missing the point completely, though.
No. 3 years. 3 years after the game comes out, that's when they finally start putting more time into guilds.
Wait, which one? Which game are you talking about?
Guild Wars 2.
Okay.
So we're pretending that Guild Wars 2 didn't have guilds before now. Okay,
No.
I'm picking up what you're laying down.
No, hang on. So, they have guilds, dude. A lot of games have guilds. Guilds are a list of names that you can open up a chat box with. That's what they are right now. Some of them have a couple leveling systems and things like that. The few games that do it well, unfortunately, have some other systems that haven't done well. Is Terra the one that has a really, really awesome guild system?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
Terra
is anybody play that game to know?
Terra. Exactly. But I mean, Terra had a
I'm that guy in
guild
chat that I was
system.
talking about in the last argument.
hold up, Andrew. I mean, we're talking about guilds. And I agree with you. And I don't agree with Guild Wars 2, actually. Guild Wars 2 came out with a pretty thing, but it's not just a list of stuff like people that you can open up chat windows with. That's not how the game was. That's not how Terra was built. Terra was built around like building guilds together.
The whole game was built around guilds and developing a social system.
Okay,
Statistically, what do people enjoy more? About MMOs? Do they enjoy the social interaction and involvement with other players, or do they like going up to a blacksmithing table and smacking, an imaginary hand against an iron for 30 seconds?
Right. Well, I agree with that. But at the same time, you're focusing, Andrew, on the social aspect and not the guild aspect. That's where I went with the guild aspect, right? But you're focusing on the more social side. But where does every player, no matter what game you play, where do they go? They go to a guild. And then if they quit that guild, they go to another guild. And then if they quit that guild, they go to another guild. No players in the in-game content go to by themselves.
A lot of players, a lot of players play by themselves. You just proved my point. A lot of players play by themselves. What they need to do is developers need to spend more time developing their game literally around the social dynamics of how people interact with one another and make that more of a focus and tie that into the story. If you can inject a player guild into the world as being like part of that world, that's where guilds have success. That's why this whole Guild Wars 2 thing where they're coming out with guild halls is such a big deal. You look at how many people are super hyped about it and are still pissed that it didn't come out when the game launched and they had to wait 3 years, was because they didn't put enough time into it for launch. It's because the game is actually giving your guild a place, and not just a guild, but you to be able to go in from a role-playing perspective and have a place that you can go and, have events and stuff like that you want to do in like a guild house, a guild hall. Having those sorts of systems in place. I'm talking about putting putting tools in the hands of players so that they can go out and grow their own communities within the community.
I agree, but guilds, your word guild is based off of a social group of people that group together.
Then call it a free company. And call it an organization. I don't care.
It doesn't matter, but that's a guild, quote unquote, for MMOs.
I'm going to
look at Star Citizen.
All right. This will be your final argument here, Chuck, just to...
Okay,
so we can move on.
Look at Star Citizen and look at what they're developing. They are developing guild ships to fight other guild ships, and people are buying tons of them, and they are selling tons of them because people want to play with other people. And the social aspect is huge. I agree, but it's all because everybody wants to fall under a group or a faction or a guild. And that's the whole point, is that people want to be part of something that other people agree with and drive to from point A to point B as a whole. That's why when we PvP as a guild, we are grouping together and following the leader to conquer other people in other guilds and other factions.
And you don't need a ton of fancy guild tools to do that, do you, Chuck? You just open up your list and look at your guild mates and say, let's go do some stuff. And that's what makes a guild work.
Troy, go ahead with your final argument here. What is...
Final argument is just from where it is now, if a developer spent more time in it, what would be the biggest change to make the biggest impact? Guilds function on the core of the people inside of them. Sure, it's nice to have a lot of fancy tools and little things that you can do, little gadgets inside your guild. That's awesome. But at the end of the day, a guild can be phenomenal if it is literally just a list of players and you have a common mindset of what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. You can make that function. A bare bones guild is perfectly functional. The argument, my best argument here is developers are absolutely spending a ton of time on guild functionality, on social functionality. There's no question about that. Yes, many of them need to be improved. Yes, they can be better. Yes, they can spend even more time on them. But what's the most neglected that really needs the most love that can make a huge impact on the way your game is perceived and sort of the economy, getting people back into the world in older zones, making the world look more alive for the player base coming in. To me, that's the crafting system. It's just a system that I chose that I thought would make the most impact if they actually spent more time on it.
All right, so this is clearly on your argument here, based on the argument here, and I think that I think that Troy's hit it on the head pretty much whenever and you guys and Andrew and Chuck,
it makes the most impact for 6.2% of the
but
population.
I don't no. Well, that's actually not what he's saying, and actually what he's also saying is true as well, because it's kind of a foundation for other systems, and so I'm giving the point to Troy on this one, because and the biggest thing is that there's not been a lot of time spent on it, and we have seen games that work really, really well as MMOs when crafting is the bottom focus and put a lot of time in it. Everybody talks about the crafting in SWG and it being amazing. And
I mean, it can literally be part of your character progression.
Yeah.
Right, but for the last couple of years, we've seen crafting become one of the most important things in games. So, I mean, yeah, if we were 3 years ago, that would be important. Nowadays, it's not important because they're already doing it. We're talking about the most time spent on.
Chuck, if you undermine and sabotage my arguments to the point that I'm gonna lose these, if I lose this because of you, I will never forgive you, man.
It's all right, but I'm just stating the point that the least impactful system is crafting because they're already focusing time. And the question was, what's the least impactful system?
No, I get you. I get you, but
they're already spending that time on it. They're putting so much effort into crafting nowadays.
Where are they who's putting it in there? Which games are putting it in there? Because I don't think any game is. I didn't hear it. You said that games have, but I haven't. You didn't name any games.
Darkfall 2, Darkfall 1,
but, MMOs.
Right, SWTOR. Darkfall is
no. Oh my gosh. Because people complain constantly about the crafting in Tor. There's not a lot of time put into crafting.
Darkfall 1 and 2 are MMOs. They're full loot MMOs. Ultima Online. Let's go old school.
Yeah, but that's all you said recently, though. That people are they're putting it back in there.
We can reach out to it. No Man's Sky. Let's go to a new game. No Man's Sky.
Is No Man's Sky got a crafting system? We don't know anything about it.
It's a huge crafting system. It's all developed off of algorithms and player based.
But that's not crafting system.
Crafting.
That's not crafting.
But it's analyzing how players play, and then it's building the crafting system so players can build their spaceships.
Talked about that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm telling you.
No, I mean, I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying, but I don't think we've seen it.
Elder Scrolls Online still has many pieces of crafted gear that are close huge, to, man. If not best in slot for many builds.
Yeah, Elder Scrolls.
I'll throw that out there. I mean, that's a game.
Hey, yeah, one game. That's why I like to play.
Rust all right, moving on to the next question here. I'm still giving the point to Troy because I still don't think people are spending enough time on it. We might see, like, in a couple years when Star Citizen No Man's Sky comes out, the answer might be different.
Right, but Rust and DayZ are MMOs that are all crafting, right?
I think most people in chat are going to argue with you.
Yeah, I think most people would disagree with DayZ being an MMO.
Not RPGs.
Don't get me wrong. I make the same argument you do of what the name actually means. Versus what we perceive it as. And what we perceive it as, what most people will argue to the death is an MMO is World of Warcraft, Rift, Final Fantasy.
Right, but those are fantasy.
The other games fall within that definition if you look at the wordage. But it's just like MOBA. People like to argue that some things that are MOBAs aren't actually MOBAs because they don't look like League of Legends.
I mean, I agree, but I mean, you're cutting hairs now.
All right, all right.
Everybody will though when it comes to.
I know, it's crazy. Oh, anyway, okay. So the next question, moving on, third question here. So Andrew's got 1 point, Troy's got 1 point, and the next question is playing off the last one, which is the least impactful system that developers have spent the most time on? So basically, this could include anything. This can include PvE if we wanted to, but PvE sucks. I don't know why they're spending so much time on that. Anyway, so I'm going to throw it to
complete 180 there. Right?
Exactly.
Right.
Well, I'm going to throw it to Chuck first. Chuck, which system are MMO developers spending too much time on? And Most of all, I mean, why shouldn't they? Why should they not be spending that much time on it?
I'm going to touch to people's hearts, and most of us old school gamers are the ones who are going to really agree with this. It's the company-based stores. People are now forced to buy crap because the company wants more of your hard-earned money that you spend your whole life earning. You didn't see people spending money years back, except on DLCs and expansions. I remember when I was like 14 and I was playing EverQuest or whatever it was, and I would go to the store and buy your expansion pack for $39.99, right? Well, that's what we did. Nowadays, companies are seeing the dollar signs and they're milking the gaming industry till we are all dry of money. Why? Because it's like gambling. Gambling is addictive and MMOs are addictive, and it's not really healthy to the people who are playing MMOs. That's why I have a problem with this, a specific purpose, because I know tons and tons and tons of people who spend tons of money. Star Citizen, let's put that for an example.
I've spent over $1,000.
$35,000. I know one person, $35,000 on a video game. Now, I know it's your hobby. I know it's your love and your passion. But
that's more money than I've made in my time.
$1,000. It's gambling and it's addictive. I know people are going to disagree with me, but it's the truth. And that's what I'm speaking to. We are paying your salary, developers, for subscriptions. $15 a month was an easy substitute for all of us back in the day when we were old gamers. It was easy. And now players are spending so much more money on virtual crap. How many of you guys have bought tons of crap and ended up leaving the game for another game?
Tryon owns me.
Star Citizen, I don't like knocking on it because I love Star Citizen. The idea is great. It's brilliant. But the company is milking players to spend huge amounts of money because people are addicted to gaming and buying virtual shit. Excuse my language. Instead of just giving it or allowing the players to earn it, you are now making people pay their hard-earned money that they spend 40 to 80, 100 hours of their hard-earned money on stupid virtual crap instead of having a subscription base. I know for a fact, developers, that you guys are making plenty of money on people just paying subscriptions instead of free-to-play crap and buying a bunch of Crown Store or player-based crap. Neverwinter, I'm speaking kind of to you right now. Because everything is bought in that game. And you guys have ruined the Dungeons and Dragons online video gaming because you guys want people to spend their hard-earned money on stuff that they love. And that's why I have a problem with it. You must pay to get the things you like and make because you want to be better than other people, players. That's why you guys spend your money, is you want to be better and look cooler than other people in a virtual game, which should have been given to us. We should be able to earn it and put our time into it like a video game.
You entitled bastard.
Even though
the reason why those models are changing.
Even though a player like you, Andrew, or myself, who are very skilled, can overtake and find a way to destroy your Star Citizenship. I bet you money if I played $80 or $150 and we got a cool ship, but Andrew and I worked great together and we were an awesome team, a gunner and a pilot, we could probably take over your $1,000 ship because we are better players and we've taken the time to learn the game, learn the system, and defeat you, even if you've paid all your hard-earned money that you have paid money for to an addictive thing. We could have beat you.
Okay.
And that's why you guys are hooked on spending money, is because that money is making you a better person and more competitive. And that's why I think
I appreciate the compliment, but I'm not that good of a pilot.
Let me go ahead and Andrew, follow that up if you can. What do you think?
It's hard to argue with that because, like, I've flown over a Grand and Rift. God, James.
I have two.
Every
man.
mount that $3,500 comes out with, I'll pay.
What was it? $30 I spent on a stupid elite mount. Luckily, I was paying a subscription. Didn't use the crap and bought an elite mount because I just had it.
We spent $30 on a horse that was.
It's so stupid. Yeah. Why didn't you give it to us? Because we're subscribers.
Anyway,
man. All right.
I need another beer, babe. Beer me. I need a beer.
cry. Oh my god. Okay. So
I just figured out Chuck's strategy to win this one. Everybody else incapable of speaking.
All right. Wow. Least impactful system that developers need to or are spending too much time on. Getting serious now, as if that wasn't serious. To me, it's hear me out. It's leveling and vertical progression systems.
Okay.
And here's why.
You're just talking to Elder Scrolls, man.
No. I'm talking about basically every MMO that's out on the market that's not like an Eve.
Oh, are you kidding me? Wait, hold up, Andrew. Look at that. Oh, I love you. You're so amazing.
All right. To me, vertical progression systems and leveling systems, I get it. You want to have some kind of a progression for your character. I'm not arguing that that's important, but the model that is being used by most MMOs nowadays is so much of a barrier to entry to new players. They're fine when you have everybody starting out at the exact same point at the exact same time at a launch time frame. You know, when a new game comes out and everybody's on the even playing field and they work on progressing themselves, it works because everyone's sort of in that spot. But a couple months in, you get to a point where a lot of people are at that end game. And you look at games now, looking back at a system that is objectively so problematic that the largest MMO on the market has had to start selling high-level characters officially, like not having Chinese gold farmers do it. And it's not because they don't want there to be a gear progression or for your character to continue progressing anymore. It's because you get a new player that comes in 6 months or a year that wants to play with their friends, and their friend has gotten a chance to go through and play the dozens, if not hundreds of hours of gameplay content to get to endgame, to get to the stuff at endgame that's supposed to be good, right? You either skip through and grind through and plow through that content as quickly as possible and ignore everything on the way so you can play with your buddy, or you don't get a chance to play with your friend until you get there and they can't play with you. That's a real problem. I've been dying for an MMO to come out with the system that truly starts you out and there's no gate to, like, you physically cannot enter this instance because you're 46 and not 50. Or here's another one. Your entire character grows stronger magically by gaining X number of points, and just because you hit level 40 means you can now wear steel armor that you couldn't wear at 39. Congratulations, you leveled up so you can wear a different kind of shirt. Does that really make sense? Like, if you find something, let me be able to put it on. I might not be the most proficient person with the sword. Let me level up my swordsmanship. That's something that I think to some degree with the class system, Final Fantasy's gotten well, is because you get to 50 and then you just level up a new weapon, and technically it's like a new class and whatever. But they're going in that direction, and they just need to push further that way so that you can, like I said, level swordsmanship or your mage or lightning magic or tailoring skills for crafting, things like that. Not your entire character, so that you can make minor continuous improvements over time. Call it horizontal if you want to give it a name, but I just say non-traditional leveling system. And then maybe eventually, years down the road, you'll be able to get proficient, at least moderately so, at a great number of things. But start out and build in one direction with your character. And then when your new friend comes in, or your old buddy from another game comes in and joins the game and wants to play it, you can take them into a dungeon or a delve and not have them be literally the door be locked for them and not for you. That's a barrier to entry. That's one of those things that makes grouping and social interaction in games suffer. And I just talked about why that, in my opinion, is still the most important thing that developers aren't focusing on. And I think where they can pull away from is coupled with this answer. And that's if they can design the whole vertical progression leveling system as we know it and do something a bit more sandboxy.
All right, Troy, what were you thinking?
Here again on this question, I tried to go with something a little less obvious. I tried to look into the question. What's the least impactful thing that developers spend the most time on? So I thought to myself, what in a game do developers spend a ton of time on that's the least impactful to subscriber numbers, player base, gameplay, no matter whether it's good or bad? And to me, the answer to that was player housing. You hear time and time again, and part of my argument is absolutely backed up by the fact that a lot of MMOs don't bother with it. And why do they not bother with it? Because the ones that do, and even the ones who say, yeah, it's probably in the future, what do they talk about? How much time it's going to take to get it done? How much effort? How many resources they've got to put into player housing? The games who have even done it right, done it well, all the time it took to get it. It doesn't come with launch. It takes a ton of time, development and resources to make player housing happen.
Hey, man, WildStar came with it at launch.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. WildStar came with it at launch, had no impact whatsoever. Yes, people said it was good. People enjoyed the housing system in WildStar. People liked the dimensions in Rift. Lotro at the time had a very good housing system for its time. Now, obviously, that their housing system is very dated at this point. I mean, if we're being honest. But those systems that take a ton of time in development have almost no impact on whether a player is going to come to the game or stay in the game. They don't think, oh, the player housing's really good, I'm going to stay a little while longer. Now, don't get me wrong. If you are playing the game and you think to yourself, man, player housing would be pretty cool, and they introduce player housing, well, sure, you enjoy it. But if you get burnt out on the game, you're going to stop, like we've talked about in other debates. You know, what's going to keep you in the game if you're kind of getting burnt out? The people you're playing with, are your friends still around? Is the content you're doing, is that still interesting? Are they cranking out the content you want to stay in the game? For the amount of effort that goes into player housing, it's the least impactful thing a developer can do. It's why even the games that have it well, they don't succeed just due to player housing, and you're not going to fail if you don't have it. You know, proof. In fact, most MMOs, or at least a lot of MMOs, skip it altogether and do the it's down the road deal because of the amount of time and effort it goes into it, and they know there's not going to be any real windfall from it. They're not going to reap what they sow out of that. They're just sowing, and then the fields never grow.
Hey, I'll say one thing about that. They reap the crap out of the benefits for it. Per Chuck's question, the amount of money they can rake in for players' housing, dude, there's a lot of benefit for it. It's a hugely impactful thing for the developer, in my opinion, and in terms of how profitable they can make it depending on their business model. I mean, that's a way that they can make more money than basically any other system in the game. That's a huge impact.
They can make just as much or more money off of mounts and spend 1,000th of the development time and resources.
My argument against that is 50-cent things in Rift, how many dozens of those things that I bought on a daily basis, that's where I lost my money. It wasn't on the couple of mounts that I bought.
Yeah, but you're talking like reses when you died and XP.
No, it wasn't just reses. I built a decent amount in Dimensions too. I mean, I've spent several $100s. I don't want to admit to this. I spent several $100s on Dimensions stuff too. So yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot, and that more than anything else, other than like the base subscription that I paid, which is probably about where that is. That's probably the next biggest thing, was stuff that was in there.
So that's your individual example, though. I think the proof is absolutely in the pudding with this, though. A lot of games just skip it altogether. It's a back burner issue, if anything, just to appease the current player base. And even we look at games, I mean, Dimensions isn't bringing players to droves to Rift. The Lotro's housing system isn't keeping them from merging all their servers down into one or two or whatever they've got nowadays. Right. I just think, I mean, they can make money on. They can make money on anything they throw in the cash shop. You guys. But for the amount of development time that goes into it, they don't get as much back out of it. Profit margins got to be way lower on that kind of stuff. But here again, it's hard to argue my side of that part of the argument or your side, because we don't have the statistics to show.
Right.
Like how much money do players really spend in cash shops on players versus mounts and pets and stuff like that.
Right. But here's
We don't
here's
have
the whole,
the data to argue that aspect.
Here's the whole question, guys. I mean, it's the least impactful system that developers spend the most time on. They don't spend a lot of time on guilds or guild housing and like those kind of player housing and stuff like that. They don't, because it's an expansion. It's added later. The most time they spend is on other things. And what do they always gear, no matter what? 100% of the time, they're building cash shops to make more money, to gain more revenue, because they're dwindling after launch. As their way to, their way to make more money is by using you as the players to get more money out of you. I mean, that's the whole entire concept. Even download contents. Everything is about money. You're buying everything, period, as a player.
Hang on. Let me debunk you real quick, because the argument is the least impactful thing the developers spend the most time on. The cash shop is the most impactful thing in any free-to-play MMO ever.
No, it's least, because you're buying MMOs for $30.
It absolutely is. No, it absolutely is really impactful in terms of revenue. So I agree with you on that.
Right, for money, but not in the game.
But here's my thing here. If we look at how many games have housing versus don't in the MMO world, if you look at how many games are free to play with cash shops versus the ones that aren't, that's a little bit closer. But there's not a lot of games with player housing.
There's not. Aside
from the random unicorns that are, say, EVE, that are sandboxy, especially in the Western market, every MMO has a vertical and some sort of a leveling system like this that I'm talking about. And that's what overall more developers are spending their time around, because they're building their entire game's framework around that progression system.
Larry.
Hang on. For the least impact, or is that least impactful system? Okay, if you're talking about for the games that develop the player housing, of which there are few, and their effect on not the bottom line, which is my counter argument, but maybe on like the longevity of how long, statistically more players are going to come to the game, then okay, I agree with you. To me, the least impactful system for me, I read this question as the least positive impact on a game, where something is actually like providing value. It provides a level of value, but it's also drastically hurting the longevity of a lot of games. You look at the just leveling progression system. Great example. We've been joking about it all night. WildStar. The reason more than anything else why that game failed was because of the vertical progression system in that game for the attunement process. You had to go step by step by step. It was weeks, if not months worth of work to get to the actual content that you wanted to do. Once your buddy got to the end and you had somebody behind you, you had to wait for them to catch up, or you could sort of go back and help them with parts of it, but not all of it.
No, it was a raid wall. They developed a bunch of walls for players. That doesn't do vertical progression as a player.
The whole
because I leveled by
vertical progression, dude.
I've leveled by myself as a vertical progression. I enjoyed it. But when I got to the end game, there was nobody to play with, and
Chuck, I'm coupling the leveling from 1 to 50 through with like that end game progression system that gates you from being interactive and playing with other players. That's adding like that barrier of entry. And if maybe you didn't mind it, but clearly a lot of people did.
No, it was the in-game stuff that made it really hard. It's just like Elder Scrolls. A lot of people quit because
made my point.
Right, but it wasn't vertical progression. It was No, because everybody who buys the new content has some type of progression up. You have to level up. I don't even care if it's an MMO. It doesn't matter. Every game has a vertical progression. Horizontal progression is only good for a certain matter of time, but you still have to level up somehow. Even Call of Duty has leveling up.
My argument is not that you don't need any form of progression. My argument is the artificial time gating kind of progression that says, okay, instead of getting yourself to a point where you have skill and you can go in and actually do something, being gated out of being able to access something.
Right, but how many
problem.
how many games make money off of totally eliminating vertical and horizontal progression? Tell me. Name a game that has no vertical or horizontal progression that's making actually a lot of money, like WoW.
Vertical
like
or horizontal? I mean, I'm not arguing against horizontal.
Anybody. Well, a horizontal is still a leveling progression. It may not be vertical. You can name it however you want, but there's still a progression.
But here's the thing, like, you can, as a new player, I mean, Eve's not the best example for that because it's weird, but my argument here is that you can get yourself from starting day one. You're going to need to work on your character so that you can go kill big bad Mr. Dragon Man in the cave.
The key difference between vertical and horizontal progression is that vertical,
you're making aspects of yourself better, not the entire overall thing. Horizontal progression, in theory, you are usually no more as far as statistically is concerned, not necessarily in skill, because you gain skill just by doing stuff. But statistically, you're usually no more than like 10 to maybe 20% better than somebody that just started the game. Right. There's gear, there's other aspects and ways that you can progress yourself.
It's like Call of Duty playing MMO or playing Call of Duty.
That's
horizontal. Yeah. Right.
That's where an MMO, first off, that's where MMOs are going. And two, that's where they need to go.
Kind of. But
I just see how many people leave these games that don't have a system like that because they're too much in that backwards.
You're going to develop
setup of you have to level to 1 to
without vertical progression. You're going to develop ADHD players who hit a game and play it and kill and leave, and you're going to have no sustainability as a video gaming development company. That is why you see, I don't even know the percentage, probably 99% of video games have a vertical progression because humans have to have goals and have to walk up a ladder to feel better than other humans, period. You have to. Vertical progression is necessary. That's why Elder Scrolls Online is necessary to have VR ranks right now, is because there's no other way for them to develop in-game content without a vertical progression.
If they release
horizontal,
if they release new content regularly, and I'm talking legit content, not Call of Duty with a new battleground kind of thing,
right? But
your new map, like if they're actually releasing new content on a semi-regular basis every 3 months, and you're doing that, you've seen Final Fantasy 14, prime example of a game that is sort of going in that direction of, yes, you get to 50, there's that progression system, but you're leveling up different aspects of your character to fill a certain role, and that's what you're making better about yourself.
Final Fantasy is developing a new expansion pack that's going to have more levels to it.
And I disagree with that in the same way that I disagree with a lot of different games. There's other ways that you can do it through things like crafting and gear. Like we just talked about crafting. You can do it through gear. You can do it with a whole bunch of different systems that you can design to put it that way.
Right. But
that's where
everybody needs a goal to shoot for, and horizontal progression is not going to be enough.
All right. Let me throw it to Troy one more time for his final argument. I think we've kind of hit the points with Andrew's and Chuck's there. So, Troy, one last.
To me, I think the other two are missing the point of the question a little bit. I think they're trying to go back to a little bit. What do developers need to spend more time on? To me, the question was, what's the least impactful that takes the most development time? What's the biggest waste of time, in other words, that requires a ton of development time? And that's why I went with the answer I went. I think both of them are arguing for things that are, I think the cash shops, I think those are absolutely the most impactful things on free-to-play games. Yeah. And I think Ixter's argument is more missing the question,
it's
more
fluffy shit.
More heading towards what do we need to spend more time on instead of what do they spend, time on that's the least impactful. I think that would be, that's another thing there that would be very impactful.
Man, this one,
to me, it's least impactful. Yeah. That could become the most impactful.
Horses are not impactful on the system because they look
good. So this is where I stand. I'm gonna have to make a call on this, and honestly, as I'm explaining this to you, I don't know who I'm going to pick. So this is the way I see it, and I each one of you guys have something that I really, really agree with, and this is why I'm having a hard time with it.
Because we're all in
because Chuck is saying, and I completely agree with this, that there is a lot of time spent on in-game stores. There's a lot of assets, especially art assets and things along that line, thrown at in-game stores. And as far as the game itself is concerned, the gameplay and your experience as a player within the game, it's like there's no impact on it at all. I mean, but a lot of time, I mean, really, because all of it is fluff, and the developers will even admit to it. However, the argument against that, mainly from that Troy and Andrew presented, is that it is impactful on development and possibly the long-term health of the game, as far as from the publishing developing side is concerned. Now, granted, there's arguments that could be said that you could make it through subscriptions and some other ways and things like that. I take it back.
Cash is king. Cash is
king. So and the other and Andrews, I am totally a horizontal progression guy. I can totally understand.
You're on the right side of the fence.
I totally understand where he's coming from. However, the only problem with that is that we don't have, and it wasn't presented either. Statistically, we have not seen that work well yet. There hasn't been any really good vertical progression. Yeah. So it's. I mean, the best system that we have to look at right now is WoW, and that is totally not a horizontal progression system.
That's a worse system to look at. Unfortunately, there's so many people.
But it's the most successful. But yeah,
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah, and then
people like you old farts that are nostalgic.
So
progressive young folks.
I went back for Warlord.
Damn old WoW.
Absolutely was. The stories they were telling were familiar to the stories I was used to back when I played. Absolutely.
And you were playing an orc, smashing freaking.
That's right.
Yeah,
so and then Troy mentioned player housing, and it's very clear as far as the player base is concerned, as far as the business side of things are concerned, that player housing makes zero impact on whether or not people come to the game, stick with the game, or anything. The only people that stick around because of player housing, honestly, are my people, are the role players. So
but how much time do they actually put into that compared to PvE or PvP or anything else in the game? That's how much impact.
As far as role players,
as far in most games.
No.
Like as far as as far as developers are concerned, or
no, I'm just saying, like, how much time is actually spent on player housing in most games? Most games have it.
Yeah, I know that, and so that's the counter to that. So, gosh, that's why this is really, really tough, because I mean, all the counter arguments are pretty balanced as far as the actual arguments themselves. So, I'm going to have to go. Although I disagree with this personally, I see the points, but I disagree with it personally. I'm going to have to go with Chuck on this one, only because I'm going to side with the player when it comes down to things like this. And in the in-game stores, truly make the very least amount of impact on the player themselves.
Man, it's all fluff, Andrew. And the reason I wrote this, Andrew, I'm gonna be honest though, bro. I agree with both of you guys, and you guys know damn well that I freaking wholeheartedly, my hearts are with you two. But man, I paid $30 for a stupid ice horn.
I mean, how many stories do
it didn't do anything? And how much time did they spend putting that elite mount into Elder Scrolls? And every game I've played, I've spent like hundreds of dollars.
One
like
dude
you, bro.
in a back room, 20 minutes.
I know, but think about all the games we've played. 33 to 34 MMOs. How much money have I spent on stupid ass shit? I haven't got nothing from it. I'm sitting here with a new game and playing a new genre. It's just,
the way I see it, the player store is kind of a larger extension of player housing as far as that's concerned. It is the biggest fluff in the game, and a lot of time, especially if you look at like Star Wars: The Old Republic's.
Yeah, but a cash shop is so impactful on.
It is. It is. But I'm gonna. Oh
what they
man.
even think of a game. I mean, let's take your favorite game, SWTOR.
Oh,
what
I
do
know.
most people have negative to say about it? Is that not impactful?
Money,
Is
money,
that
money,
not
money.
uberly impactful?
I will not play SWTOR because of their business model. Talk about impact.
Yeah, well, but what I'm saying is that it doesn't help any player.
It doesn't. Yeah, as far as the player,
it doesn't
as
help
far as the
you
player,
as a player. It helps them as a company.
You say
we are
if I play a Perfect
players.
World game, I get
that being said, that being said, I do absolutely. I don't agree with Chuck, and in the sense that because I think he's coming from the perspective. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're coming from the perspective that you don't need the in-game store.
You don't need none of that stuff.
But I think you do. I totally think you do because I'm because of statistic. It costs more to make a game now than it's ever cost to make a game in the past.
And the prices of box games have not changed.
Yeah, and
exactly.
Because that's the way they make the money, right?
It's been $60 for a new title. For
for
literally for as
years.
long as I've been gaming.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
and if you, because if you look at
even at his age, that's a pretty long.
I mean, I know a couple of minor statistics with the games that I really focused on before I started playing them. Both of them, obviously, Star Wars games, but Star Wars Galaxies.
Amen, brother.
Star Wars Galaxies took 2 years to develop. Star Wars: The Old Republic over 5 years. And a lot more was poured into it. So therefore, and that's the point that I see is that this game, Star Wars: The Old Republic, which came out almost 10 years after Star Wars Galaxies, now takes almost over twice as long to actually make. And so there's more money being poured into it.
And you tell me Galaxies was amazing. 10 years of amazing gaming. It was it not? Come on, dude. Awesome.
I didn't play Galaxies. So SWTOR spent 5 years developing that game. I guarantee you almost none of that was spent on cash shop because that happened afterwards.
Oh, no. I actually believe a lot of it. Not a lot of it was.
Some of it's reskins of stuff.
Yeah. See, so I mean, it depends on your perspective on that because a lot of the art assets that are in the cash shop now were created when the game was being made.
Yeah, but that's not new development time.
No, you're right. It's not new development time since the cash shop was implemented.
What's funny
but
is
it was development time overall.
But it was
when we were in our ship, we were flying around. When we were in our ship in SWTOR, we were flying around with different skins of the same exact craft that we all paid money on because we wanted to look different from all the other players that got that one same craft. I mean, we did. I'm telling you, SWTOR was bad.
Let's move on.
All right, so we are all tied up, which is not how I expected it, honestly. Last question here. I always throw this one in there because it's a lot of fun to speculate on what kind of MMOs we'd like to make, what we'd like to see. So, this one is specifically built for an MMO for longevity. This means that the idea behind the game is that people are going to be playing this for a long time. This isn't going to be a flash in the pan kind of MMO. This isn't going to be WildStar. So, give me. We have
we're all just killing WildStar because we're so angry about it because we all bought it and we're so disappointed.
We did all buy it, didn't we? We've all bought that. Yeah. All right.
Like, oh, you guys were promising us so much, but then you dropped it.
All right. Anyway, so what I asked him was to give me 3 focal systems, and we're going to go through this kind of quickly. I'm kind of just going to let them give their arguments and maybe a quick counter argument to each one of them, and then we can move on because we're long on time here. Anyway, so 3 focal systems, the genre, and then who's actually going to develop it. And since we started with Andrew, we're going to end with Andrew going first. So go ahead, sir.
All right. So this is tough because narrowing it down to 3 systems was
this is your focal systems,
the focal systems, the core systems. I'm going with like a horizontal, non-traditional leveling system or progression system, or whatever you want to call it. Excellent casual PvE, if you want to call it. I'm going to say story. I'm going to say excellent story is the number 2, and 3 is the other PvE side of things. So this is dungeons, delves, raids, PvE content, the dynamic events, all that sort of stuff I lump into a PvE bubble. It's just like the game content, encounters, all that stuff. The genre, I've actually got a specific universe. The genre is high fantasy, kind of like a medieval MMORPG setting. If you're familiar, you might not be. It's a little obscure for some folks. Dragonlance.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if you know Dragonlance. Yeah. Okay, I love Dragonlance to death. Margaret Weiss, Tracy Hickman did a phenomenal job with that. They started in the 80s. It's still writing about it today. Developer, they're not an MMO developer, and I think in some ways that's a good thing. Bethesda Softworks.
Oh my God. I think we all agree.
Okay.
Because my argument for Bethesda is they don't know MMOs. I think that's a good thing because MMOs need to be shaken up a little bit, change things. You look at some of the other systems that I'm putting in here, like the progression system in Skyrim is a lot less of a vertical, like traditional level 50 kind of system. And then there's the fact that they've got good resources, a lot of talent, and basically every game they ever create is just like game of the year by a landslide. So I think they do a pretty good job. My argument for Dragonlance as a universe is, one, holy crap, do they have a monstrous, beautiful world to operate and build the game on. It's a great framework. I made the argument for story at the beginning. The reason why some games do really, really well, a lot of it has to do with story, and a lot of it has to do with IP. You look at Final Fantasy and why they've managed to rebound from their abysmal launch with 1.0 and going into 2.0 with A Realm Reborn. You look at Warcraft starting out with Warcraft before they got into World of Warcraft. You look at things like SWTOR. SWTOR would not be anything without the lore. I truly 100% believe that. You look at even Elder Scrolls Online, how they managed to rebound. Another great example. It's a great, thorough, dynamic universe that is basically like bone dry in terms of nobody's really touched it. So it's a great framework. They've got some stories and things like that, but it's a framework. So there's enough meat for the writers to be able to have a lot of creative freedom in developing details and crafting their own stories. The non-traditional leveling system, for me, this is kind of MMO Skyrim-y in the design that I'm looking at. It's a game that rewards exploration. It rewards following the storylines and picking and choosing and taking out some of, like, I say dynamic events for PvE. It's dynamic in the storytelling as well. Like, you make a decision to go to somewhere and you see an army fighting or something. I'll get to that in a second. Like, things that just randomly happen. You get sidetracked, go off to explore, and you don't know if you're going to be strong enough to take on, like, you walk in, maybe there's a bear, or you meet, I don't know, some kind of a hermit and you have to go fetch his cat or something. I don't know. Or maybe you go into a den of dragons, or you stumble into a den of thieves or abandoned city or ruin or something. Like, all of those sorts of things, it rewards exploration. And certain enemies are going to be a lot stronger and you're going to have to interact and go after them differently. But you're not really, like, traditionally gated from getting into it just because you're a low level. That's what I'm talking about with the non-traditional leveling system. So you get gear, you can enchant stuff, you run different magic, or you have potions, or, maybe you're leveling a specific skill set, like, your two-handed sword, like you're a great swordsman, that sort of thing. Along with that, and I'll get into the PvE content now, because I've kind of covered the story. The PvE content, to me, I want to remove, similar to the way Guild Wars 2 sort of done this with removing the Trinity. You can build to be more of a tanky kind of character, but it's not going to be sit there, tab target, that kind of combat. It's going to be action based. You're going to have to be on your toes. You can go into a dungeon with 5 different, or 5 archers or something and see how that goes. And the PvE content, basically, like I said, you go out into the world, you explore, you find things. There's going to be a cave or a delve or something, and you discover it with your buddies. And you go out and you kill the everything there. Or you go off and you find a huge dungeon by yourself, and you're like, oh crap, I can't do this by myself. You go out and find somebody else and bring them back with you. That sort of exploration side of it, huge dungeons and things like that. And then interactable. The other big thing with PvE is I want to see an interactable world in terms of dynamism, where like you can use your environment to protect you from an enemy attack, or you can knock a giant wall over on top of enemies and crush them, sort of thing. Like those sorts of cool design mechanics. I think it's something, one, that if anybody can do it and do it right, it's going to be Bethesda. And in the just massive, just monstrously huge world that Dragonlance presents there, it'd be the perfect place to go.
All
and last thing, dragon mounts would totally fit the lore, so I just win. So
all right, so Dragonlance the MMO. Troy, what is your counter to that one?
Well, a lot like Andrew, I've got an IP in mind as well. So I'm going to tell you my genre, and it's going to sound really weird when I first say it. Post-apocalyptic old world fantasy. Now you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, what the heck is that?
Fallout 4.
The IP is Stephen King's The Dark Tower.
Okay.
One of my favorite book series of all time. It is such a great blend of every epic genre you can think of. There is magic, there is wizards, there are cowboys, there's Arthurian lore. The Knights of the Round Table are involved. There's, I mean, anything and everything that you think of. And that's going to open it up to great class diversity. You're going to be special when you play your class. Every class is not just like the class next to it. Your class is going to be unique. You're going to have unique tools, unique things to do. My 3 focal systems, I'm definitely going limited hotbar action combat. Tab targeting is so dated. I'm not a fan of the hybrid games like WildStar and Guild Wars 2. I'm not a big fan of those. I know a lot of people like that. It's better than just flat out tab targeting. I get it. But I love the limited action, the Neverwinter and the ESO. I love their combat systems. I think they would work great for anything. If I wanted to go console in the future, those translate very well to console. Thinking ahead for the longevity of the game.
Consoles are going to be around for a long time, right?
Yeah. Everybody says consoles die, but yet every new generation comes and they're fine. They sell out.
Just gonna plug a PC into your computer. That's it.
My second,
or TV, I mean,
sort of core feature of my game is going to be the crafting system. I've already talked about how important I think the crafting system is. It's going to be the be-all end-all of your gear. Not as literal as Monster Hunter, where you go out and kill a specific monster, get that tooth, and that tooth becomes a weapon. But you're out in the world, and the monsters you kill, they drop the resources, patterns, whatever it needs to be. We'll figure it out in alpha testing. The resources you need, you go and kill monsters to create the gear that you're going to use, and the gear is going to be a hefty part of your progression. The biggest system overall, and this is also going to be why I chose the developer I chose. The future of MMOs is changing, ladies and gentlemen. What we know as an MMO right now is not going to be an MMO forever. The main core system of my game relies on the fact that we play MMOs because we enjoy the social interaction. We play single-player RPGs because the story, the environment, and the characters are 1,000,000 times better. The world's more intriguing. I'm going to combine those in my game, and like the future of MMOs, you're going to have your own world. You go into the big city hubs are instanced. Every player on the server is in that city. It's a big bustling city. You go out into the world, we develop it more like a single player RPG. We don't make the sacrifices necessary to take into account there's going to be hundreds or thousands of players in this same zone that you're in. You've got your own personal instance. Friends can be invited. You can invite a party. We'll beta test to figure out what's going to work best for our servers. But you can invite your friends to adventure out in the wilds. You don't expect to run into thousands and thousands of people out in the wilds. This is going to offer better NPCs, better storytelling, more dynamic events out in the world, better immersion in the world that you're in, and your friends can still come along and play. How many people have you ever heard say, man, if Skyrim was multiplayer, I wouldn't have to play an MMO? That's sort of what we're going for. Involved in that also, and I'll look to Dragon Age Inquisition a little bit as my inspiration for this. They didn't do the invite your party into your single player world. That's what's going to make us an MMO. But they did have that great single player experience. And then they didn't do it as great as it needs to be done, obviously, but they had also had the multiplayer aspect, play with all your friends online, invite people to parties, do that sort of in-game dungeon raid type content. And they didn't have to sacrifice the main part of their game to make that happen. There's a nice happy medium and combination of both out there to be had as technology evolves. And that's more towards where the future of MMOs is going to go, not make as many sacrifices for the sake of the thousands of other people that you're not actually going to play with. Make a better game for world for you and the folks that you are going to play with.
All right, so everybody that's watching is clear. He means BioWare as the developer.
Oh yeah, sorry,
BioWare. It's BioWare.
BioWare, and
the story and the focus that they put on story is, I mean, let's be honest. Bethesda and BioWare, they're above everybody else when it comes to that sort of gameplay and interaction and making those immersive games with that sort of story and those types of characters.
Okay. Chuck, tell me your MMO. What do you got?
Okay. So the question was build an MMO for longevity. Give 3 focal systems, the genre, and the developer, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to go backwards. My developers, because every MMO seems to pull from different development companies. So it's going to be Robert Space Industries, BioWare, and Bethesda. And different developers for each. Yes. And wait, it's crazy.
Hold on, what?
The reason you think this is weird.
Yeah, I want to hear it. Like, I'm seriously intrigued to hear
Bethesda, we're going to pull the PvP players from Bethesda. The reason being is because they're the ones who've developed Dark Age of Camelot. And they developed the very hardcore strategy-based sieging type PvP.
Technically, it's ZeniMax, but
We're right, Cinemax, but I'm talking about the Dark Age of Camelot, Bethesda and Cinemax. Then BioWare is going to be the story-driven stuff, like Dark Age Inquisition or Dragon Age Inquisition, and all these, right, my bad, and then all the other games that they develop, like BioShock and so on and so forth, right? But then Robert Space Industries for the amazing sandboxy, open space, amazing game development, right? I want to build, like Troy, I have to kind of side with you. I want to build an MMO based off of fantasy and space, much like Fable with Star Citizen and SWTOR and No Man's Sky, where the sandbox develops itself. This game would develop and build upon itself through guild and player and NPC decisions, utilizing algorithms that we have developed slowly through these new games that are coming out in 2016, where these algorithms analyze and conceptualize new unexplored areas of the world. So how players interact, how NPCs have been interacting with players, it starts developing upon itself to build galaxies, to build worlds, to build different planets, and so on and so forth, right? Build, and it's going to build and grow. NPCs learn. They're not stupid. They don't just sit here and run through the same coding. They actually learn, and they fight against different factions of their own type, and then they'd fight against players. But I'm not talking about NPCs that just fight against players like Elder Scrolls. I'm talking about ones that learn how players fight and how they group up, and then learning and developing a style or a way to combat the players and learn how they group in zergs and learn how to fight against those, because we have algorithms right now. And trust me, I know, because I've been working with MIT guys at my job as a bomb technician on a research and development base. There are algorithms out there that we could easily input to make the availability for AI for NPCs in video games. Have NPC strongholds that defend themselves against player-based siege and player-based attacks and player-based planetary attacks, kind of like Fallout 4. That's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like a Fallout 4 MMO where you have FPS-based fast targeting systems like Terra. Terra was a very fast-paced, very quick, action-based video game where you are in an MMO, but yet you feel like you're playing an FPS. It's very console friendly, so you can play with a controller or you can get on a mouse and keyboard. Fallout 4 with space exploration, where you and a group of your buddies gets together. We develop a spacecraft. We craft a spacecraft by coming whatever world we start on. We go out and we savage and rape and pillage the whole entire land for everything that's amazing. And then we gather it all together and we build a spacecraft. It could be shabby, crappy spacecraft, but if it gets us out into space, that's what works, right? And you start learning, just like Elder Scrolls does, you start learning the different ways to develop it. I really like the Mass Effect based player decisions but I want Mass Effect to be developed into a multiplayer type kind of concept, where when you're playing Mass Effect, you have your group of players who are playing, except you as the RPG are playing all the different characters. Instead of that, imagine your guild is now all those different players, and you are all gathering together like SWTOR and making one decision. And overall, the basis of whoever wins the decision, that's the decision that's made to progress through the PvE content. I can't really go on. I want to keep developing this idea, but the idea is like a Fallout 4, Mass Effect, SWTOR based Star Citizen, where there's space exploration and it's sandboxy, like No Man's Sky, where every planet develops on itself. The computer learns how players play and it keeps building on itself. You see what I'm saying? It's like everything culminated into one. And I know it's really hard to do, but I've seen some games that are coming out in 2016, 2017 that are actually preaching this and actually pushing towards this concept. But I want it to be more of a fantasy and more of an MMO base, where like SWTOR has like your Jedi Knights and stuff, but you also have your heavy armored people, but you also have the guys who have technology and so on and so forth.
Almost like a Warhammer 40K kind of situation, maybe even.
Right, but it's sandboxy, and everything learns. The computer learns from your decisions as a whole, as a group of players.
So
you can flop planets.
Chuck just wants like corporate politics simulator 2016. Like,
so
how are you gonna get 3
developers? Hold on a second. First off, I'd like to. There's a couple pieces of homework here. Dark Age of Camelot was actually made by Mythic, by the way.
Right.
But I'm talking about the developers.
So
ZeniMax.
Yeah. And number 2 is, I for one bow down to my NPC overlords, and as soon as that AI takes over, you don't have to worry about anything from me. But at any rate,
that's what I mean. Yeah, he's developing Skynet the game.
I know, right? It's like it's kind of scary.
It's something.
It's learning from,
but that's where it's going. If you guys look at the reality of the progression of gaming, that's where it's going. Have you not seen everything that we know right now is developing towards the future of what I just said?
And people don't like reality. They like escapes from reality, and that's what my MMO is.
Right, but this is not. This is a game still.
It's not. All right, so let's do this. Let's Paul had a chance to kind of present your games. Let's do a really quick. I'm going to give each of you guys like a couple of minutes because we're going long here. So a couple of minutes to just kind of take apart the other two MMOs here, and then counter it by why yours would be better at doing whatever they're presenting. So I guess let's just start up at the top again. We'll go with Andrew.
So yeah, all right. It's tough because I think we kind of pulled a couple of things sort of from each other, but
yeah, I mean,
Troy, where you're talking about like it being Skyrim-y and being like a co-op kind of MMO. Is that what that's sort of what you're talking about? Like,
yeah, more of a co-op single player game than what we traditionally think of as an MMO.
Yeah, I get where you're going with that. I kind of agree. That was sort of the thought process that I had. It would be like you have a smaller set of like, I don't know, the way you instance things, there's not going to be a lot of players, or you can pull people into your instance or something like that and go out and explore. I like the idea of where you're going with that. But basically, I feel like we kind of hit very much the similar thing. The only major difference is, and I also took, the action combat a little bit more for granted on my end. To me, what's going to make my MMO better, one, I still think long term, what can be done in terms of content created for this sort of this universe that I've got here in Dragonlance, the just sheer mass of the world and where you could go with that in terms of content. If we're pushing out a new piece of like DLC-ish kind of content every 3 months, I mean, 20 years worth of content isn't going to touch a third. There's so much for longevity that could be packed into the game in terms of content and adding new stuff, different features and story and world. That's where I'm coming from the longevity standpoint, where, and that's what the question was built on, was how the longevity of the game. Whereas I don't know how in depth you can get, Troy, with yours, and Chuck, I don't even know what game you're creating. So
that's the idea. You're supposed to be a Pathfinder and build an MMO that's for longevity, right?
Right, but
it's the idea of being an MMO and not developing the same system. You can take points from the systems that are successful, but you're developing a new system that's supposed to last, and that's the whole idea.
It's not going to last if there's not some element of familiarity, though. You've got,
of course,
and I'm talking like something that's realistic to come out, like I guess sort of realistic, like within the next decade. I don't think Bethesda's going to make an MMO, but the same way I don't think BioWare is going to make like an MMO traditional sense kind of thing. Right. But the story is where the longevity is. We've seen every 3 months, if you create new content, that's what brings people back all the time. You can have new systems and new content and new raids and things like that, and that's secondary. It's important, but it's secondary. That's what keeps you there for the entire 3 months and not just for the first month and a half. There's always going to be an ebb and flow to some degree. But the story is where the longevity comes from. And, you know, I still think the exploration Skyrim Online sort of design in that way, where I'm not saying Skyrim Online, but like the way that it's an explorable, dynamic-ish kind of more dynamic universe, where you're just rewarded for going out and exploring and doing those, you know, raids and things that you come up to, without having necessarily like a level requirement to enter something. I think it's a much more accessible. Potentially, you can bring a lot more players into the game and hopefully keep them in the game, because they don't get there, fall in love with part of it, and then realize I'm not able to play with my buddy, and then leave because they can't play with their friend like they can when they pop into a Call of Duty.
All right. Excellent. Troy.
And Dragon Mounts. So, yeah.
And Dragon Mounts. Nobody else has Dragon Mounts, so therefore...
yes, Skyrim doesn't have those.
But they're cool Dragon Mounts, dude. Like,
it's hilarious to me that our two MMOs aren't exactly the same, but we're so similar.
Yeah,
you are essentially making Skyrim online. I'm trying to make Dragon Age online.
Yeah. That's actually what I typed out, was Dragon Age and Skyrim.
I mean, the core ideas are very similar. I think for me, the biggest focus for my game going forward, and I can do DLCs and new group content. My group content doesn't. It's kind of like it is in Dragon Age. I mean, yes, there's a place in the world that exists to represent where this dungeon is, but you know, that's an instance, just like any dungeon in MMO now. I can crank out new dungeons. I can crank out a new zone to go exploring. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, if I build a Dragon Age type world that's limited to, you know, one to a small group of players at a time, I can change up that world more dynamically than even Guild Wars 2 does. I can make an NPC dead permanently because that player in that group chose to kill that NPC. The rest of the thousands of other players, it doesn't matter to them if that NPC is dead in my world. Then now, of course, obviously the NPCs in cities and stuff, you know, that's a whole different story, because we want that to be a big bustling city. That's the idea. But the idea here is to not make the sacrifices, like I said, that you have to make to accommodate thousands of players, and make it a more dynamic, immersive experience for the small group that you've got. And there's no better way to tell stories than sort of that direction. And it's hard to make counterpoints against Andrews. I think he was having the same problem. It's hard for him to counterpoint mine
because it's so similar.
Yourself because it is so freaking
I'm
similar.
Counterpointing my own answer.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm sitting here trying to talk in circles. Like, okay, if I counterpoint this, then I'm counterpointing myself at the same time. But just my company's focus is less sacrifice for the sake of thousands, more benefit for the sake of the handful that you're actually playing with.
I think that's
and I think my IP is more diverse. There's more potential for classes and characters and stories to be told in my IP, because that's the less ditch effort I got to go to try to separate out our two games.
Dragon Mounts. Just say it.
All right, Chuck. So why is the one that you're developing, and how? And also, I'd like to hear.
How is it going to happen?
That's one of the things that I'd like to hear, because Andrew did point that out earlier. Is how is this going to happen? How are you going to get multiple devs?
Well, first let me drop the bomb on these two. All right, Dragon Age Inquisition, like you, Troy, have said, has already developed a multiplayer mode in Dragon Age Inquisition, which will feature action-packed 4-player, and I'm getting this from the website, action-packed 4-player cooperative quest, separating the single-player open-world story to a multiplayer and open-world story. All right, so you've already got exactly what you wanted, with more players to play the in-game content. Now, Skyrim, there is a lot more mods and people that are developing. Right, but I'm saying that Skyrim also has developed a multiplayer mod, and they have developed it, and it works fine, and you can download it, you can play with your buddies, and you can go ride dragons and so on and so forth. My MMO that I want to develop is completely different than all of that. The reason being is because it's like a Fallout 4 MMO with a sandboxy space exploration and growth, where you and your buddies can group up. You can develop bases, you can build ships, you can craft all sorts of different weapons from the worlds that you're in, and you can defend them against other players, and you can gather as a group and do collective building and moving on to different colonies, and it's all interactive between the players. And the system develops itself amongst the ways the community builds. And the reason I'm thinking of this is because I'm thinking of ArcAge. The way they developed ArcAge. Yes, it fell through, and I agree it was a flawed system, but ArcAge had a lot of awesome social ideas. Now, if you took an ArcAge social idea and you wanted to do the justice system like Elder Scrolls is putting in and ArcAge put in, and you want to build up amongst the community, they now have been developing algorithms that learn from players' decisions, and then the NPCs react from that. And so my idea is kind of like a Fable Star Citizen SWTOR, where everything is player-based and everything grows amongst itself, and the whole entire world is developed by players. So if there's a planet that the computer has built, you as the player in your guild can fly over to that thing, go and harvest the crap out of it, build your base on it, and then start shooting starships over, like Star Wars, the idea of Star Wars, shooting starships over to other planets and conquering other planets. That's the kind of idea. But I like the FPS fast-paced type MMO. I like the fact that you have to aim a cursor at people. You have to have small, like 1 through 5, like SWTOR or Tesso does, or the Elder Scrolls, how they do it, where it's like 1 through 5, and then you got to switch your build or your weapons, and then do 1 through 5 again. I like that idea because it's fast paced, and it makes players actually be on their feet the whole time instead of sitting there, tab target, and push a bunch of buttons. And what I'm getting at is the fact that you two have already developed a system that's already been modded and already been developed inside the system already once. The question was to build a new MMO for longevity, and I believe that the Star Citizen idea with the SWTOR RP and the Fable kind of decision making and SWTOR decision making is going to build a longevity MMO, like something that's going to last a long while. And the idea is No Man's Sky, which is kind of like that, except it's first person shooter kind of game, which I like the more fantasy based MMO. So like Warhammer, I guess, is kind of Fallout 4. I mean, that's kind of the the genre, kind of that steampunky idea, but yet you have kind of the space exploration. The movie or the films that I'm thinking of, I'm trying to think. Firefly is kind of the idea of an MMO. Like you've got that kind of like new age weaponry, but yet that old school kind of medieval fantasy based stuff. But you have space exploration that develops on itself, like Star Citizen.
Taylor's gonna kill me, but just give him the point. I'm so confused.
No, here. Okay, so all right. So I kind of have a grasp on what Chuck is getting at. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make a call on this one. This one's a very tough one, especially. A lot of the systems you guys were talking about are really overlapping each other and are pretty much the same thing, especially when it comes to combat. Combat just seems to be very similar.
Please make my MMO.
Yeah,
somebody.
Right.
So I'm going to have to kind of pull apart the differences here, and the big differences I see are Chuck's AI system, which is really pushing the edge of what Daybreak is talking about with EverQuest Next. Honestly,
exactly.
And
I just
then
didn't want to see the game, but yeah.
And then the what Troy's going out with, like, but he did talk about crafting, which really wasn't a part of anybody else's. But he also, the personal instances is quite a bit different than what either Chuck or Andrew are talking about as well, but it's more along the lines of what like Guild Wars 2, or excuse me, not Guild Wars 2, but Guild Wars, the original one, did. Similar to that. Okay. And then with Andrew's, I think there's a couple of things that kind of stood out. Was the horizontal progression, and also the open world, being able to, and which kind of they the way you presented them, they kind of fed off of each other. The open world,
like,
because
you're literally an adventurer and you're going out and discovering and fighting.
Right.
All that stuff.
But I think the biggest thing this is really weird, because I usually when presented these things, I'm usually focused on the mechanics of it and everything. But I think the thing that really pushed me over the edge was the IP. And Troy has the most amazing IP, and I think this IP, I think with Dark Tower will promote longevity, because it's got so many different genres in it.
But they mesh together
exactly. So and I think it being a known IP, I think that's what separates Chuck's from Troy's, is because it's an absolutely known IP. Dark Tower is a known IP, and it fits all the genres, and it's got the longevity. So
Is
Troy,
Star Citizen though a well-known IP?
No, it's not.
But you can't use the Star Citizen IP because it is an existing game.
But they already exist. But that's what I'm saying. Star Citizen's a very well-known IP.
Well, not by itself. By itself, it is not a known IP. It's known because of what happened with Star Citizen as an IP by itself. Like, if you were to launch a game right now that had the Star Citizen IP but wasn't Star Citizen, nobody would know what was going on, because it is
with the world.
The world doesn't exist.
Right, but they made millions,
man.
They made millions and millions and millions of dollars off of just a
They
thought.
haven't made them. They've raised it.
They're fully player backed. Player backed. No company is funding them. People are funding them. And it's all based off of them coming up with a concept that people like. Am I right or am I wrong?
Somebody bear this man, please.
All right. So, but anyway, I'm going to point to Troy, and unfortunately, so that means he wins the game again. So I'll throw it to Troy first. Troy, let us know what you're doing and where we can find your stuff on the internet.
Man, I tell you what, I would love for you to follow my personal stuff, but right now it's all about all of us as a team, and that is playtowin.tv.
Play to win, baby.
Check us out on Twitter. Head over to the website. We're still getting things up and rolling. You know, we're the Tesso Nation podcast. We're moving to Play to Win because we want to expand out outside of just Tesso Nation. Tesso Nation is not going anywhere. We still love ESO. We're still going to play. We're still going to talk about it. But there are so many other games that we're super passionate about. Play to Win is the place where us, other people who are super passionate about all the games are going to come on your computer screen, talk about those games, have a conversation with you about those games. Check us out, Play to Win with the number 2.tv. We got a fancy new logo and everything this week. You need to go check it out.
all right. So is that where you guys want to go, Andrew?
I stay up too late.
Andrew.
Got nothing on my brain. That's what you say.
He's apologizing to take.
All right. I'll shake it off. That's all good. No, definitely. Like Troy said, we're working really, really hard on Play to Win. I've actually got the Twitter handle, I think, in the lower third here, probably. Yep. Check us out, Play to Win TV on Twitter. Our Twitch channel is Play to Win _TV because Twitch sucks. And YouTube, search Play to Win TV. We've got the playtowin.tv website. We're going to be launching tons and tons of new stuff over there. We're hoping to get that up within the next, I'd be shocked if we don't have it ready within the next 2 weeks. So, go ahead, head over there, bookmark it, and we'll be doing shows and written stuff and lots of fun, happy, shiny things. So,
all right.
Check us out over there.
And Chuck, any last words?
Yeah,
other than you were robbed. No, I'm just kidding.
_Dunmire. Chuck _Dunmire. But really, we are all a team. And it's funny because you look at everything that we've talked about tonight, and I know I was really passionate and I'm really extreme, and I apologize, but I'm a bomb tech. I'm made to be extreme. So
he's really drunk too. I mean,
no, not even close, dude. It's like 8 to 10 beers to get me drunk. I'm actually not even.
Yeah, he's yet. 9 in.
Wow, I'm 4. Come on, give me some slack. Play to Win TV, guys. Play to Win TV. We are all a team here. We all work really hard together. And it's funny because we all see eye to eye. You've got a lot of veteran, really hardcore players like Troy and I, Andrew. Troy and I have played like 33 to 34 MMOs. I don't know about Troy, but he's probably played more. Andrew is a little baby. But we're all working together to develop the most amazing stuff for Play to Win TV. And we all love each other. And I know we had a little emotional conflict here. But that's what happens when you're in a brotherhood relationship where you all stroke each other's backs. So it's Chuck Dunmire. See you guys later.
That's a great way.
Stroke each other's backs. How awesome is that? All right. Well, if you don't know already,
don't stroke anybody's back.
All right, if you don't know it already, I am Larry Everett. You can find me on Twitter at Shadow SHADDOE. I'm with Massively OP and at Massively OP on Twitter. We are also Massively Overpowered on Twitch. On where are we looking at? YouTube, and you can also go to massivelyop.com or massivelyoverpowered.com and check out the website there. I want to thank my guests for showing up from paytowin.tv. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do, and thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. A lot of fun on the show, and we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. I got PAX this coming up in a couple days, and that's where I'm going to be. So you won't see me next week, but the week after that. So catch you later. Bye bye.
See you guys.
See ya.